The massive alien ships appeared at the edge of the solar system like dark thunderclouds. Their hulls were smooth and black, stretching for miles in every direction. Energy crackled along their surfaces in patterns that hurt human eyes to look at directly. 200 of these monsters drifted through space toward Earth, moving with the confidence of predators who had never met anything that could fight back. Admiral Vexithera stood on the bridge of her flagship. Her forearms crossed as she studied the primitive solar system ahead. Her purple skin gleamed under the ship's lights, and her large black eyes showed nothing but boredom. This would be conquest number 848 for the Galactic Empire. The species here called themselves humans, and their technology reports showed they had barely managed to put a few small colonies on nearby planets. "How pathetic," she said to her tactical officer. "They don't even have proper energy shields around their home world. This will be over in hours." Meanwhile, on the bridge of the Earth Defense Force ship New Seoul, Captain Hyunwoo Kim watched the alien fleet approach on his main screen. He was a tall man with calm eyes and steady hands. He had spent 15 years preparing for this moment, but seeing 200 massive warships heading toward Earth still made his stomach tight with worry. "Sir, we're getting their first transmission," said the communications officer. "Put it on screen." The alien admiral appeared, towering and intimidating. When she spoke, the translation software made her voice sound like grinding metal. "Primitive humans. I am Admiral Vexithara of the Corthanian Empire. You will surrender your planet immediately and submit to imperial rule. Your species will be integrated into our empire as workers. Resistance is pointless. We have conquered 847 worlds. Yours will be no different." Hyunwoo stood up slowly and straightened his uniform. "Admiral Vexithara, I am Captain Hyunwoo Kim speaking for Earth's government. We appreciate your introduction. However, we cannot simply surrender our world without proper discussion. Perhaps we could arrange a diplomatic meeting." The alien admiral laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Diplomacy? You have 72 hours to surrender completely. After that, we will demonstrate why resistance is impossible. Your tiny ships are no match for Imperial technology." The transmission ended, leaving the human bridge in tense silence. Commander Ji-Hai Park, the ship's tactical officer, immediately began studying the sensor readings of the alien fleet. She was known throughout the Earth Defense Force for her sharp mind and ability to spot patterns others missed. Something about these ships bothered her. "Captain," she said, looking up from her console, "these alien ships are massive, but look at their weapon signatures. Everything is energy-based. Plasma cannons, particle beams, some kind of energy torpedo system. But I don't see any kinetic weapons at all, and what does that mean?" Hyunwoo asked. "It means they've never fought anyone like us." Down in the engineering section, Lieutenant Dong-hyun Lee was running diagnostics on the ship's stealth systems. He was a short, stocky man who understood machines better than most people understood other people. The readings he was getting didn't make sense. "Hey, Chief," he called to his assistant. "Are our stealth systems working better than usual? Or are their sensors not as good as we thought?" "What do you mean?" "I mean they're only detecting 12 of our ships. We have 47 vessels in this immediate area alone. Either our technology got a massive upgrade overnight, or they can't see us properly." The chief engineer walked over and looked at the readings. "That's impossible. Their ships are clearly more advanced than ours." "Maybe," Dong-hyun said thoughtfully, "but advanced doesn't always mean better at everything." Back on the alien flagship, Admiral Vexithara was reviewing intelligence reports about human technology. Her tactical officers had been studying human broadcasts and communications for months. Everything indicated a species that had barely learned to leave their home planet. "They use chemical rockets," one officer reported. "Their weapons are primitive projectile-based systems. They don't even have basic energy shields on most of their ships." "Projectile weapons?" Vexithera laughed again. "What do they do, throw rocks? No wonder they developed so slowly. Any species still using physical ammunition is centuries behind galactic standard technology. Their largest ships are only a few hundred meters long," another officer added. "Our smallest cruiser is 5 times bigger than their flagship." "Perfect. This will be easier than the last 3 conquests. Order the fleet to hold position at the system's edge. Let them think about surrender for the full 72 hours. Sometimes the waiting breaks their spirit before we even have to fire a shot." On Earth, emergency meetings were happening in every major capital. World leaders who had spent decades arguing about trade and territory now faced the reality of alien invasion. In the United Nations building in New York, President Chen of the world government was coordinating with military commanders around the globe. "Captain Kim," she said over the video link, "what are our real chances?" Hyunwoo looked tired but determined. "Madam President, we won't know until we see how they fight. But our initial analysis suggests they might have some blind spots we can exploit." "What kind of blind spots?" "They seem to have developed their entire military doctrine around energy weapons. Our intelligence suggests they've never encountered kinetic weapons in space combat. Every species they've conquered probably fought the same way they do. And we don't fight that way." "No, ma'am. We definitely don't fight that way." Meanwhile, hidden throughout the solar system, Earth's real defense fleet waited in silence. The 47 ships the aliens could detect were just the beginning. Cloaked behind asteroids powered down in the shadows of planets, and scattered through the outer system, hundreds more human vessels waited for orders. Colonel Min Ho Jung commanded the hidden fleet from a stealth destroyer called the Incheon Strike. He was a veteran of Earth's last major war and understood better than most that sometimes the best weapon is the one your enemy doesn't know you have. "All ships maintain radio silence," he transmitted on quantum encrypted channels. "Let them think we're weak. Let them think we're scared. When the time comes, we'll show them what humans do when we're cornered." As the 72-hour deadline approached, both sides prepared for what they expected to be a very different kind of battle. The aliens prepared for another easy victory against primitive technology. The humans prepared to show the galaxy that sometimes the most dangerous enemy is the one who fights. Completely differently than anyone expects, the stage was set for a confrontation that would change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. Admiral Vex Thara decided the humans needed to see Imperial power before the deadline expired. She selected a human mining station orbiting a distant asteroid as the perfect target for demonstration. The station was small, defenseless, and far enough from Earth that destroying it would send a clear message without ending the war too quickly. "Target the mining facility," she ordered her weapons officer. "Single plasma barrage. Full power. I want the humans to see what happens when they oppose the Empire." The massive alien dreadnought's main cannon charged with energy that made the surrounding space shimmer like heat waves. A beam of superheated plasma, bright as a small star, lanced across space and struck the mining station directly. The explosion was spectacular, visible even from Earth's telescopes as a brief new star that flared and died. On the bridge of the New Sol, Captain Hyunwoo watched the destruction with a carefully controlled expression of horror and despair. His acting had to be perfect. The aliens were undoubtedly monitoring all human communications. They just destroyed Station 7. He said loud enough for the communication systems to pick up. 300 people were working there. Commander Ji-Hai Park played her part perfectly, letting shock and anger show in her voice. "Captain, we have to do something. We can't let them massacre our people." But privately, through secure quantum channels that the aliens couldn't detect, the real communication was very different. The mining station had been evacuated 3 days ago, and what the aliens had destroyed was an elaborate holographic projection powered by hidden generators. The real Station 7 was safely cloaked on the other side of the asteroid, its crew watching their fake home explode with grim satisfaction. Admiral Vex Thara was pleased with the effect of her demonstration. Human communications showed panic, despair, and growing calls for surrender. She opened a new transmission to the human flagship. "Captain Kim," she said with satisfaction, "I trust you saw what happened to your mining station. That is what Imperial weapons can do to your facilities. Imagine what they will do to your populated worlds. You have 18 hours remaining to surrender." Hyunwoo bowed his head as if in defeat. "Admiral, surely we can discuss terms. Perhaps a meeting between our representatives." "Neutral ground?" "Very well. Send a single shuttle to these coordinates. 1 representative. No weapons. Any deviation from these instructions and your homeworld burns." After the transmission ended, Hyunwoo allowed himself a small smile. The aliens were taking the bait perfectly. While the diplomatic theater continued, Lieutenant Dong-hyun Lee was making discoveries that would change everything. In the engineering section of the New Sol, he analyzed the energy readings from the alien weapon that had destroyed the fake mining station. "This is incredible," he told his team. "Look at these power signatures. They're generating massive amounts of energy, but it's all focused on plasma generation and particle acceleration. Their shields work the same way. Pure energy barriers." His assistant looked confused. "What's wrong with that?" Energy shields are supposed to stop everything. No, Dong-hyun said, his eyes bright with excitement. Energy shields stop energy. They work by dispersing heat, deflecting charged particles, and absorbing electromagnetic radiation. But what do they do against a chunk of metal moving at high speed? I don't know. Nobody uses metal projectiles in space combat. Exactly. Nobody in the galaxy uses kinetic weapons because everyone assumes energy shields will stop everything. But energy shields can't stop matter. They can't stop a physical object. It's like trying to stop a thrown rock with a flashlight beam. The implications were staggering. The entire Galactic Empire had built their military around energy weapons because every species they encountered had done the same thing. It was an evolutionary arms race where everyone had evolved in the same direction, but humans had developed differently. Earth's harsh environment had forced humanity to develop diverse solutions to survival. When they reached space, they brought that diversity with them. While other species perfected energy weapons, humans had built railguns, kinetic bombardment systems, and weapons that threw chunks of metal at incredible speeds. Dr. Yoonji Choi, working aboard the research vessel Busan Explorer, was conducting her own analysis of alien technology from recovered debris. What she found confirmed Dong-hyun's theories and added new dimensions to the discovery. Their metallurgy is incredible, she reported to the command staff. These hull materials can withstand plasma temperatures that would vaporize our best alloys. Their energy absorption capabilities are beyond anything we imagined. But Captain Hyunwoo sensed there was more. But they're surprisingly brittle under kinetic impact. It's like they designed their ships to withstand any conceivable energy attack, but never considered someone might just ram them with a chunk of tungsten. The alien materials were optimized for energy warfare. Their hulls could absorb plasma, deflect particle beams, and dissipate enormous amounts of heat. But they had no more resistance to kinetic impact than advanced ceramics. A railgun slug moving at a significant fraction of light speed would punch through their armor like paper. Meanwhile, Colonel Min Ho-jang was coordinating with the hidden human fleets scattered throughout the solar system. His stealth destroyer, the Incheon Strike, was positioned near Jupiter's largest moon, where the gravitational interference made detection nearly impossible. Phoenix Squadron reports ready, came the encoded transmission. 47 ships armed with kinetic kill vehicles. Dragon Squadron confirms position, reported another fleet commander. 32 heavy cruisers with railgun batteries. Tiger Squadron standing by. 51 destroyers equipped with nuclear-pumped kinetic missiles. One by one, the hidden fleets reported in. What the aliens thought was a small primitive force was actually a massive armada, designed specifically for kinetic warfare. Every ship carried weapons that the Galactic Empire had never encountered and didn't know how to defend against. The aliens had made a crucial mistake. They had studied human technology from intercepted broadcasts and communications, but they had only seen what humans used for civilian purposes. They had never seen Earth's military technology because humans had learned to keep their weapons secret. Earth's governments had spent decades preparing for the possibility of hostile first contact. They had developed weapon systems in complete secrecy, built fleets in hidden shipyards, and trained crews for scenarios exactly like this one. The alien demonstration had shown their hand completely, while the humans had revealed nothing. As the diplomatic shuttle prepared to launch for the meeting with alien representatives, Admiral Vexithara was confident that surrender negotiations would begin within hours. Her intelligence officers reported growing panic among human populations and calls for immediate capitulation from several Earth governments. What she didn't know was that the panic was carefully orchestrated. The surrender calls were performed by actors, and the primitive species she planned to conquer had been preparing for this moment for longer than her empire had existed. The shuttle launched toward the designated meeting point, carrying Commander Ji-Hai Park as Earth's negotiator. Her real mission wasn't to negotiate surrender. It was to get close enough to an alien ship to plant monitoring devices that would give the human fleet detailed information about alien sensor systems and defensive capabilities. As the shuttle approached the alien vessel, Ji-Hai smiled grimly. In a few hours, the Galactic Empire was going to learn that sometimes the most dangerous enemy is the one who appears completely defenseless. The demonstration was over. Now the real education was about to begin. The 72 hours expired at exactly 14:30 Earth Standard Time. Admiral Vexithara had received no message of surrender from the human government. Despite the overwhelming display of Imperial power, she was mildly annoyed but not surprised. Some species required a more thorough demonstration before they accepted reality. All ships move to attack formation, she ordered. Drop stealth systems and show them the full might of the Imperial fleet. Let them see what they're facing before we destroy their pathetic resistance. 200 massive warships shimmered into full visibility around Earth's solar system. Their hulls gleamed with energy barriers, their weapons charged with enough power to crack planets. It was a sight that had brought 847 worlds to their knees in terror. On the bridge of the New Sol, Captain Hyunwoo Kim watched the alien fleet reveal itself with apparent despair. His shoulders slumped and his voice carried defeat when he opened communications to all Earth Defense Force vessels. All ships, he said slowly, as if every word was painful. This is Captain Kim. The enemy has revealed their full strength. He paused, letting the weight of the moment settle over the communication channels. Then his voice changed completely, becoming hard as steel. Now let's show them ours. All ships, disengage optical camouflage. Show them what we actually brought to this party. What happened next would be talked about in military academies across the galaxy for centuries to come. The space around Earth, which had appeared almost empty except for a dozen small human vessels, suddenly exploded with light as hundreds of ships decloaked simultaneously. Stealth systems that had hidden entire fleets powered down, revealing the true scope of Earth's defense force. 847 ships materialized around the alien fleet. Massive dreadnoughts that dwarfed anything in human space emerged from behind asteroids. Cruiser squadrons appeared from the shadows of planets. Destroyer wings uncloaked in perfect formation around the alien flanks. Admiral Vexithara stared at her tactical display in shock. That's impossible. Our sensors showed only 12 primitive vessels. Where did they all come from? Unknown, Admiral, her tactical officer reported, his voice tight with worry. They must have stealth technology far beyond our estimates. But they're still primitive. Look at their weapon signatures, no energy weapons at all. They're still using kinetic projectiles. Vexithara relaxed slightly. Numbers meant nothing if the weapons were obsolete. Kinetic weapons against Imperial shields? They might as well be throwing rocks. All ships engage the enemy. Show them why energy weapons rule the galaxy. Commander Ji-Hai Park, now aboard the human flagship as fleet tactical coordinator, smiled coldly as she received the engagement order from Captain Hyun-woo. She had spent her entire career studying alien military doctrine through intercepted communications and captured technology. She knew exactly how they would react. All ships, this is tactical command, she broadcast on secured channels. Initiate pattern Omega. Target priority is enemy shield generators and power systems. Remember, they've never seen kinetic weapons used in space combat. Make every shot count. The first volley from the human fleet was unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. 847 ships fired simultaneously. But instead of energy beams or plasma bolts, they launched thousands of tungsten rods accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed by electromagnetic railguns. The projectiles were invisible to most sensors, moving too fast to track visually, and carrying kinetic energy that made nuclear weapons look like firecrackers. The tungsten rods hit the alien energy shields and passed through them like they weren't there. Because, effectively, they weren't there. Energy shields worked by dispersing heat, deflecting charged particles and absorbing electromagnetic radiation. They were perfect protection against plasma cannons, particle beams, and every other energy weapon in the galactic arsenal. But they had no effect whatsoever on chunks of metal moving at relativistic speeds. The first alien ship to be hit was a heavy cruiser on the Imperial fleet's left flank. A dozen tungsten rods, each weighing several kilograms and moving at 20% of light speed, punched through its shields, its armor, and its hull like hot needles through butter. The kinetic energy was so immense that the ship simply disintegrated, its structure unable to absorb the impact. What was that? Admiral Vexithara shouted as her tactical display showed the cruiser's icon simply disappearing. Unknown weapon type, Admiral. Her weapons officer reported in panic. Some kind of projectile system. It went right through our shields. That's impossible. Energy shields stop everything. These aren't energy weapons, Admiral. They're firing physical objects. Before Vexithara could process this information, the second volley arrived. Lieutenant Dong-hyun Lee, coordinating the engineering response across the human fleet, watched with professional satisfaction as his predictions proved accurate. The alien ships were marvels of energy technology, but they were completely helpless against kinetic weapons. Phoenix Squadron, target the enemy flagship's engine section, he directed. Dragon Squadron, focus on their weapons arrays. Remember, we want to disable them, not destroy them completely. We need prisoners for intelligence. The human fleet moved with precision that the aliens had never encountered. Each ship knew exactly where to strike for maximum effect. Years of analysis had identified every weak point in Imperial ship design. The alien fleet tried to respond, but their weapons were useless at the ranges where kinetic weapons were most effective. Plasma cannons had limited range in space, and particle beams lost coherence over long distances. The human ships stayed far enough away that alien weapons couldn't reach them, while their railguns could strike with perfect accuracy across millions of kilometers. Dr. Yunji Choi, monitoring the battle from her research vessel, was taking detailed readings of every alien system. Her scientific excitement was almost as great as her satisfaction at seeing the plan work perfectly. "Incredible," she reported to the fleet command. "Their power systems are completely optimized for energy generation. They're using antimatter reactors that produce 10 times more power than our fusion systems. But all that power is channeled into weapons and shields that are useless against us." "What about their armor?" asked Captain Hyunwoo. "Exotic materials that can withstand plasma temperatures of millions of degrees, but they shatter like glass under kinetic impact. It's like they designed their ships to fight a completely different kind of war," which of course they had. The Galactic Empire had conquered hundreds of worlds, but every species they encountered had developed the same basic technology tree. Energy weapons, energy shields, energy-based propulsion systems. It was the natural evolution of spacefaring technology. Except humans had evolved differently. Earth's violent history, diverse environments, and constant warfare had produced a species that solved problems in dozens of different ways. When humans reached space, they brought that diversity with them. Admiral Vexthara watched in growing horror as her fleet was systematically dismantled by weapons she had never imagined possible. Ship after ship was disabled by projectiles that her sensors could barely detect, and her shields couldn't stop. "All ships, emergency retreat," she ordered. "Fall back to the system's edge. We need to regroup and—" Her order was cut short as a tungsten rod, fired from the human dreadnought New Sol, punched through her flagship's bridge shields and took out the main communication array. The rod had been precisely aimed to disable communications without destroying the command center. Commander Ji-Hai Park's voice came through on the alien emergency frequency, speaking in perfect Corthanian thanks to the translation programs developed from captured communications. "Admiral Vexthara, this is Commander Park of the Earth Defense Force. You are surrounded and outgunned. Surrender your fleet immediately, or we will continue this demonstration of human military technology." Vexthara looked around her damaged bridge. Half her fleet was disabled or destroyed. Her remaining ships were in full retreat, but the human vessels were faster and more maneuverable. There was nowhere to run. For the first time in her military career, Admiral Vexthara of the Corthanian Empire was facing defeat at the hands of what she had considered primitive savages. The savages, it turned out, had weapons that her empire had never dreamed of. The battle had become a complete disaster for the Galactic Empire in less than 2 hours. What should have been a simple conquest of a primitive world had turned into the worst military defeat in Imperial history. Admiral Vexthara's flagship limped through space with massive holes in its hull, life support failing, and half her crew dead or injured. "Admiral," her communications officer reported with a shaking voice, "we're receiving surrender demands from the human fleet. They're offering safe passage for surviving crew members if we abandon our ships." Vexthara stared at the tactical display showing the remains of her once mighty fleet. Of the 200 warships that had entered the system with absolute confidence, only 37 were still capable of movement. The rest were either destroyed completely or floating dead in space, their crews rescued by human boarding parties. "This is impossible," she whispered. "We have the most advanced military technology in the galaxy. How are they destroying us with primitive projectile weapons?" Her tactical officer, a young Corthanian who had graduated top of his class from the Imperial Military Academy, could barely comprehend what he was seeing. "Admiral, their weapons ignore our shields completely. Our entire defensive doctrine is based on energy warfare. We have no protection against solid projectiles moving at these speeds." Captain Hyunwoo Kim, opened a communication channel to the alien flagship. His voice was calm and professional, showing none of the satisfaction he felt at seeing the plan work perfectly. Admiral Vexithara, this is Captain Kim. Your fleet is defeated. We're prepared to accept the surrender of all remaining Imperial vessels. Your crews will be treated according to the standards of civilized warfare. The alien admiral looked at her bridge, where emergency lights flickered and the smell of burnt electronics filled the air. Her proud empire, which had never faced a defeat in over 1,000 years of expansion, had been humiliated by a species they considered barely advanced enough to leave their home planet. We surrender, she said finally, the words tasting like poison. But this isn't over, human. When word reaches the Imperial capital, they'll send a fleet that will darken your sun. 1,000 ships, 10,000 ships if necessary. We'll deal with that when it happens, Hyunwoo replied calmly. Right now you need medical assistance, and we need to discuss the terms of your surrender. Commander Ji-Hai Park coordinated the aftermath of the battle with the same precision she had shown during the fighting. Human rescue ships moved through the debris field, pulling surviving aliens from their damaged vessels. Medical teams worked alongside alien crew members to save lives on both sides. It's incredible, she reported to Captain Hyunwoo. Their casualties are much higher than ours because their ships weren't designed to survive kinetic impact. When our projectiles hit, their hulls just shatter. There's no gradual damage like we see with energy weapons. Lieutenant Dong-Hyun Lee led the engineering teams examining captured alien technology. What they found was both impressive and frustrating. The alien ships were marvels of energy manipulation, with power systems that made human technology look primitive. But they were completely useless against the warfare methods humans had developed. Look at this, he explained to his team as they explored the engine room of a captured cruiser. This antimatter reactor produces more power than our largest fusion plants. They use it to maintain energy shields that could stop any plasma weapon ever built. But the shields are useless against railgun slugs, his assistant observed. Exactly. They put all their technology into solving problems that don't exist in human warfare. Meanwhile, we developed solutions they never imagined. The cultural differences went deeper than technology. Dr. Yoon-ji Choi, interviewing captured alien officers, discovered that the concept of kinetic weapons in space combat was literally unthinkable to most species in the galaxy. They all developed energy weapons first, she explained to the senior staff. Once you have plasma cannons and particle beams, why would you ever go back to throwing rocks? It seems primitive, inefficient, backwards. But throwing rocks works, Captain Hyunwoo pointed out. That's what makes humans so dangerous to them. We never abandoned old solutions just because we found new ones. We kept developing both. While they perfected energy weapons, we perfected kinetic weapons. Now we have tools they can't defend against. Colonel Min-ho Jang supervised the boarding operations on disabled alien vessels. The psychological impact on the alien crews was devastating. These were soldiers who had participated in hundreds of conquests, who had never experienced defeat. Now they were being captured by a species they had considered helpless. The ones who can still speak keep asking the same question, he reported. How did we make our weapons go through their shields? They can't understand that the shields simply don't work against kinetic projectiles. The boarding parties found evidence that confirmed humanity's worst fears about the Galactic Empire. Ship logs contained records of planetary bombardments, forced relocations of entire species, and the systematic destruction of civilizations that refused to submit. The Empire wasn't just conquering worlds, it was committing genocide on a galactic scale. But they also found something unexpected. Many of the alien crew members, especially those from recently conquered worlds, were relieved to be captured. They had been forced to serve in the Imperial fleet and had no loyalty to their conquerors. Sir, reported one of the boarding team leaders, we've got volunteers. Some of these aliens want to help us fight the Empire. They're saying this is the first time anyone has ever defeated an Imperial fleet. Word of the human victory was already spreading beyond Earth's solar system. The surviving Imperial ships that had managed to escape were carrying news that would shake the galaxy. For the first time in centuries, the Imperial military had been completely defeated. Admiral Vexithara, now a prisoner aboard the human medical ship, was trying to write her report to Imperial Command. How could she explain that her advanced fleet had been destroyed by weapons that seemed primitive? How could she make them understand that humanity's backwards technology was actually more effective than anything the Empire possessed? The humans, she dictated to her recorder, do not fight like any species we have encountered. Their weapons are kinetic projectiles accelerated to enormous speeds. Our energy shields provide no protection. Our armor, designed to withstand plasma temperatures, shatters under kinetic impact. She paused, struggling with the implications of what she was saying. Imperial Command must understand these humans are not primitive. They are different. Their technology evolved along completely different paths from galactic standard. What we consider advanced, they consider limited. What they consider basic, we never imagined. The report would eventually reach the Imperial capital, but it would take months to travel across the galaxy. In the meantime, other species were hearing whispered rumors of an impossible victory. Enslaved worlds were learning that the Empire could be defeated. Resistance movements were stirring on planets that had been crushed under Imperial rule for generations. Captain Hyunwoo stood on the bridge of the New Sol, looking out at the debris field that had once been the pride of the Imperial fleet. In a few hours, they had proven that Earth could defend itself. But he knew this was only the beginning. Captain, Commander Jihai reported, "We're receiving transmissions from multiple sources throughout the galaxy. It seems word of our victory is spreading faster than we expected." "What kind of transmissions?" "Diplomatic inquiries from species we've never heard of. Trade proposals, requests for military assistance. And, sir, some of them are asking if we can teach them how to build kinetic weapons." Hyunwoo smiled grimly. Humanity had wanted to be left alone, to develop in peace on their small corner of the galaxy. Instead, they had accidentally started a revolution that would change the balance of power among the stars forever. 6 months after the Battle of Earth, the galaxy was a very different place. News of humanity's victory had spread through every inhabited system, carried by merchant ships, diplomatic couriers, and desperate refugees fleeing Imperial rule. For the first time in over 1,000 years, the Galactic Empire faced open rebellion on multiple fronts. Captain Hyunwoo Kim, now promoted to admiral, stood in the newly constructed Earth Diplomatic Center, meeting with representatives from dozens of species. The building buzzed with alien languages being translated in real time, as civilizations that had never spoken to each other before came together with a common purpose. "Admiral Kim," said Ambassador Talarak of the Viridian Republic, his translator converting his clicks and whistles into human speech. "My people have been under Imperial rule for 3 centuries. When we heard that someone had defeated an entire Imperial fleet, we thought it was a myth. Now we want to know how we can learn your warfare methods." Similar conversations were happening throughout the building. Species that had been conquered, enslaved, or threatened by the Empire were all asking the same questions. How did humans build kinetic weapons? How did they make their ships invisible to Imperial sensors? Most importantly, how could they teach others to fight back? Commander Jihai Park, now Admiral Park and head of the new Interstellar Defense Academy, was overwhelmed by the demand for human military expertise. The Academy, built in orbit around Earth, hosted students from 47 different species, all eager to learn kinetic warfare tactics. "It's remarkable," she explained to her staff during their weekly briefing. "Some of these species have technology that makes our best systems look primitive. They have faster-than-light communication, matter transporters, even limited-time manipulation devices, but none of them ever thought to accelerate a chunk of metal and throw it at their enemies." The reason was becoming clearer as humans studied galactic history. The first species to achieve interstellar travel had developed energy weapons, and every civilization that came after had followed the same path. It was natural selection on a galactic scale. Species that didn't develop energy shields were quickly conquered by those that did. Over millions of years, everyone converged on the same solutions. Except humans had evolved in isolation, cut off from galactic civilization. They had developed their own solutions to warfare, solutions that the galaxy had never seen before. Lieutenant Dong Hyun Lee, now Director of Technology Exchange, spent his days working with alien engineers who were trying to reverse engineer human kinetic weapons. The results were both fascinating and hilarious. The Zephyrians built a railgun that can accelerate projectiles to 90% of light speed, he reported with amusement. The problem is their projectiles disintegrate from the acceleration. They're so used to working with energy that they forget about the physical limitations of matter. What about the crystalline collective? They're trying to grow kinetic weapons out of living crystal. It actually works, but the weapons keep trying to evolve on their own. Yesterday, one of their test railguns decided it wanted to be a flower instead. The technology exchange was working both ways. Humans were learning from alien science just as aliens learned from human military doctrine. Dr. Yoonji Choi led a research team that was revolutionizing human technology, using principles borrowed from dozens of different species. We've integrated Corthanian power systems with Viridian stealth, technology and crystalline computational matrices, she explained to a gathering of Earth's top scientists. Our new ships will be invisible to any sensor system currently used in the galaxy, and they'll carry weapons that can strike targets in different star systems. But the most significant changes were political. The Galactic Empire, which had seemed invincible for centuries, was crumbling from within. Conquered worlds were declaring independence. Imperial forces were defecting to join human-trained resistance movements. The Emperor himself had not made a public appearance in months. Colonel Minho Jiang, now General Jiang and commander of the Free Galaxy Alliance military forces, coordinated resistance operations across hundreds of worlds. His forces were a mixture of humans, liberated aliens, and Imperial defectors, all trained in kinetic warfare tactics. The Empire is trying to adapt, he reported during a strategy meeting. Their latest ships have kinetic barriers, physical armor designed to stop projectile weapons. But they're making the same mistake they always make. Which is? Asked Admiral Kim. They're fighting the last war instead of the next one. While they're building armor to stop railgun slugs, we're developing weapons that phase through matter, or that exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Thanks to our alien allies, we're always one step ahead. The war was far from over, but the momentum had shifted completely. Imperial fleets that once terrorized entire sectors now fled from human-trained resistance fighters. Worlds that had been enslaved for generations were learning to fight back using weapons their oppressors couldn't understand. Admiral Vexithera, still a prisoner but now working as a military consultant for the human forces, had become one of the most valuable sources of intelligence about Imperial operations. Her transformation from proud conqueror to reluctant ally illustrated the broader changes sweeping the galaxy. The Empire will never surrender, she warned during one of her briefings. The Emperor would rather destroy every world in the galaxy than admit defeat. But many of us in the Imperial military never wanted to conquer innocent species. We were following orders from leaders who saw other civilizations as resources to be harvested. And now? Admiral Kim asked. Now we see that the Empire's time is ending. Your people showed us that there are other ways to organize a galactic civilization, ways that don't require conquest and enslavement. The changes went beyond military and political. Human culture was spreading throughout the galaxy, carrying with it ideas that challenged fundamental assumptions about civilization, technology, and society. Human concepts like individual rights, democratic government, and technological diversity were revolutionary to species that had lived under imperial rule for centuries. But perhaps the most important change was psychological. For the first time in galactic history, a primitive species had proven that advanced didn't always mean superior. The Empire's technology was more sophisticated than human systems, but sophistication had become a weakness when it prevented adaptation to new challenges. Admiral Kim stood before the Galactic Council, the first human ever to address the representatives of free worlds. The council chamber, built on a neutral space station, housed delegates from over 200 species. 6 months ago, he began, the Galactic Empire considered humanity too primitive to matter. They saw our kinetic weapons as throwbacks to an earlier age of warfare. They were wrong, but not for the reasons they think. The assembled delegates listened with complete attention. They think we won because our weapons were better. That's not true. We won because we think differently. While the Empire perfected one solution to every problem, we developed multiple solutions. When they encountered a problem their technology couldn't solve, they were helpless. When we encounter a problem our technology can't solve, we invent new technology. He paused, looking around the chamber at species who were learning to be free for the first time in centuries. The Empire calls us primitive because we never abandoned old methods when we developed new ones. They're right, we are primitive. We still use fire wheels and sharp sticks just like our ancestors. But we also use antimatter, quantum computers, and weapons that can crack planets. The combination of old and new, primitive and advanced, is what makes us dangerous to anyone who thinks there's only one way to solve a problem. The applause came from representatives of species that communicated through sound waves. Light patterns, chemical signals, and methods humans had never encountered. It was the sound of a galaxy learning that diversity was strength, not weakness. As the session ended, Admiral Kim reflected on how much had changed. Humanity had wanted nothing more than to be left alone to develop in peace. Instead, they had accidentally triggered a revolution that would reshape galactic civilization. The Empire still controlled vast regions of space, but their grip was weakening. Every day brought new reports of worlds declaring independence, Imperial forces defecting, and resistance movements using human-designed weapons to strike back at their oppressors. The galaxy was learning that the most dangerous enemy wasn't the one with the biggest ships or the most powerful weapons. It was the one who fought differently than anyone expected, who solved problems in ways that seemed impossible, and who never forgot that sometimes the oldest solutions were still the best ones. Humanity hadn't conquered the galaxy. They had taught it to be free, and that, Admiral Kim thought, was a far more important victory than any military triumph could ever be.